She's an attorney in private practice that almost forced Alderman Joe Moreno in the 1st Ward to a runoff, with 82 votes shy. Now, Ann Shaw is charging of very disturbing things happened on Election Day. We're here to talk to her about what some of those things are. Hi, thanks for joining us, Ann.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, tell me, what are some of those very disturbing things that you filed on Tuesday?
Yeah, so, we fought really hard in this race, and we raised a lot of issues. And some of these, on Election Day, we observed, myself and Rhonda Locke, who was one of the challengers, we had our own operations, and then we kind of compared notes later. And we also had our own poll watchers. So we had poll watchers and she had poll watchers, and both ours saw the same things. So, in the complaint, we had situations where Alderman Moreno's poll watchers were asked by judges to translate Spanish for the voters, which is not proper. It's illegal. As we know, the ballots are in multiple languages. And then, one of my poll watchers even observed Alderman Moreno doing illegal electioneering. And both our poll watchers witnessed one of Joe Moreno's campaign staffers also touching, ballots and breaking down equipment, even though she's not an election judge.
So when you say things like electioneering, like what? I mean, I've heard that people sometimes say that's electioneering if you're wearing a button inside the polling place. What exactly are you alleging?
So, well, other than what I stated before with one of his campaign staffers touching ballots and breaking down equipment when they're not supposed to, which can lead to integrity of the process.
Well, specifically Alderman Moreno, though, you say that he was was electioneering.
So, so he actually was witnessed talking to a voter while the voter was voting inside the election box and kind of assisting them with actual voting.
Mm-hmm. So Illinois has a very tight rule for Chicago aldermanic campaigns for filing a recount, 5 days, and you had an extra day because of Casimir Pulaski Day. You said in your statement when you announced that you were filing for a recount that you thought that this was an unconstitutional rule.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so it's very the problem is that the Chicago municipal elections, they don't certify their results until March 12th. That's under the code. That's when they're required to do so. But under state law, if we are challenging, if any candidate challenges the election or the election process, they have to do it within 5 days of the election. So that's the problem. We don't have official results. We can't get access to the ballots until after the official count. So do you see the problem?
So how did you do a discovery recount then?
So what ended up happening was because we saw some, how do I say this, some very suspicious and some major abnormalities with the absentee ballots. And indeed, Alderman Moreno actually stated on Chicago Tonight that they had an extensive mail-in absentee ballot campaign.
And that's not unusual.
Not always, but unfortunately that's where a lot of the fraud occurs, is with absentee ballots and senior citizens. I mean, you can Google this, and there's actually, believe it or not, like recipes that tell you how to do it. And, when you are a challenger that's actually following the rules and the laws and not, doing anything suspicious or funny, it's really difficult, right? Because
so what's an example of one of these recipes that you would do in order to futz with mail-in absentee ballots?
Sure. So a lot of times you can you can do it online, request an absentee ballot. You can have it sent anywhere. So a lot of times, people will order a whole bunch for a number of people and then fill it out themselves and mail it in for the alleged person, right?
So maybe they would do that at a senior home.
Oh, absolutely. And, we've gathered evidence of that, actually.
Tell me about that evidence. What did you gather, and how did you do it so quickly?
Well, we're very determined. I've been a civil rights attorney for almost 20 years. And one of the reasons why I went into civil rights law is because I don't like injustice. And I'm always fighting it, and I'm always trying to make sure that people receive justice. So when I saw how close the votes were, and we actually analyzed it, because, all campaigns, we kind of need to debrief and figure out where did we go wrong, how we could have improved, what could have happened. But with it so close, I was very surprised. And we analyzed some of the precincts and actually showed some strange abnormalities. On average, I think each precinct was around 20%, but certain ones that had senior homes in them jumped up to 50, 60, 70, even 85%. With a majority of those votes going to the alderman, to Joe Moreno.
And do you know that those had a high number of absentee ballots?
Yes.
Those precincts?
They did. And so then, and that's public record. You could see who got it. Anybody can do that. And so some of the things that, we would like to look at is signatures, if in case they actually, because traditionally, and you still can request it by mail, and that's usually how it's done, and then you sign the request. So there's an application for an absentee ballot, and the voter actually has to sign it requesting it. But they don't have to give a reason anymore. So that's something that we hope to look at. Also, if talking to a voter, if the voter said, no, I didn't request an absentee ballot, then something's very strange there, because they actually a voter has to request it themselves. They can't have somebody else do it for them without their knowledge. And, or people who voted by absentee ballot who said they didn't vote. And they didn't authorize it, or even campaign people coming and actually filling out the ballots for the individual who doesn't need assistance.
So what's the next step? When does this actually get heard?
So right now we filed on Tuesday, so the complaint gets served on the board members for the Board of Elections. That's a formality. They're being served on in their official capacity, right? And then, of course, all the people who are part of the election. Since Rhonda and I are both the plaintiffs in this case, so we have to name the other candidates, Joe Moreno and Andrew Hamilton. So, and then we are going to, basically, go through the process of the court hearing, and obviously everybody's aware that this has to be expedited. We anticipate being able to access a lot of the ballots and applications right after March 12th when it's certified, and we'll have to go through that. In the meantime, we're just kind of like analyzing the data and, working on the next steps.
So there's a pretty poor track record for recounts, at least in Chicago, for aldermanic races. I think the last few recounts that I remember hearing about in the last 8 years or so, none of them succeeded. So what do you think of your odds of that?
Well, I mean, I can't really say, because unfortunately we don't have access. I mean, the whole system's designed this way to, and I think the problem was the state didn't anticipate municipal elections such as ours with a runoff in the code. So a lot of the problem is, I don't know. I can't tell you today what I think is going to happen. It is a very close race. If we can prove a pattern of fraud, that there's systemic fraud in the whole election process, that can potentially kick out a large number of votes against the person that perpetrated the fraud. But like I said, it's hard to say that now, since we don't actually have access to these actual ballots, and that's part of the challenge.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
You can learn more about this Recount campaign, as well as 19 runoff campaigns, by subscribing to AlderTrack at our website at aldertrack.com, by listening to this series on Rivet Radio, or by subscribing to our series on YouTube. Thank you very much. More great stuff to come.